Great. Well, thank you so much for introducing me, Charlotte. And it's lovely to see lots of people looking at potentially applying for a Nuffield scholarship. So I've got around 10 or 15 minutes this evening to give you a bit of a whirlwind into Nuffield, a little bit about my journey, and maybe some advice for those of you who hopefully are going to take it to the next step and apply. So I'm not going to go into my background, really. I'm going to first of all kick off by just really introducing Nuffield. And I'm sure all of you are aware of what a Nuffield involves, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about why I think this is a fantastic opportunity, and I would really encourage a lot of you to look into it. And the fact that you're in this room and that you're listening into this conversation is because you're naturally very curious. And I think Nuffield, the reason why it's such a great opportunity is because it's really trying to break through some of the echo chambers that exist within agriculture, that exist within ways of thinking, and to really get you outside your lane. So that opening quote for me is really what I would say really sums up quite a lot of the Nuffield experience, is getting you to really get outside your comfort zone and to engage with totally different cultures, different ways of thinking, which I can tell you has been an absolutely amazing opportunity for myself. Obviously, from a professional point of view, a Nuffield is going to be absolutely game-changing, whether it's for your business, whether it's for an idea that you've been thinking of, whether it's for something that you don't know yet. I'm about to change my career direction because of a Nuffield. So from a professional point of view, it's really going to open up so many doors for you. But really what I would like to say is actually personally, for me, Nuffield's been very powerful. When I applied for Nuffield, my actual reason wasn't particularly about my topic. It wasn't particularly about a business idea that I had. It was to develop a network of really friendships within the UK, but also around the world. And I'd say it's been incredible for me in that sense, is building that network. And this is going to be something that you're going to learn so many different things about yourself, your capabilities, it builds your confidence, it challenges you and your resilience in ways that you don't know. So I think from a personal point of view, a Nuffield can be quite a transformative experience. And I'm happy to share some more about that in the Q&A. I've said there about building a networking community. I know you've heard it before, but Nuffield really does open doors. I mean, I now have contacts in probably every continent in the world, within multiple countries. And if I'm looking for someone to speak to, they'll connect me to somebody if it's not them. So you really have this amazing network in the palm of your hand. And it's not just, when you travel through a Nuffield, it's not just about visiting people doing Nuffield, because that's, for me, I'd say 80% of my visits haven't been with Nuffielders, but using the Nuffield name has started a conversation, and it's really opened doors. So it's not only you do have that network, but it's allowed you to sort of dream big and to meet people that probably before might not have been as possible. So, I mean, that networking community is going to be extensive, and it's going to really serve you well into the future as well. I'm not going to go into too many of the points here. I'm sure they're quite self-explanatory. You know what Nuffield is. You're traveling around the world. You're picking up ideas to bring back and influence change over here, whether that's change at a personal level, whether that's change within your business, whether it's change at an industry level globally. I think the sort of world's your oyster with that, but it's about being that person that comes back and sort of challenges the status quo, that sort of disruptor who's willing to see things slightly differently. And that is why Nuffielders are seen as thought leaders in the industry. I sort of cringed at that term when I applied, because I thought, oh God, I'll never really consider myself as a thought leader. And then I've come to realize through Nuffield, the fact that you're traveling and you have an opportunity, a lot of people don't, to brush shoulders with people within a field of interest that many people will never get exposure to, which is why when you do come back and you're able to share that knowledge, you do become a thought leader, because you've got something that a lot of people haven't maybe had a chance to learn about before. I'm sorry, I realize I whistled through that a little bit, but to tell you a little bit about me, so my topic for Nuffield, I'm looking at how narratives are changing around farming around the world, particularly because there's a lot of scrutiny being placed on farming practices. And I wanted to sort of delve into those conversations, speak with stakeholders who are influencing policy, influencing mindsets, really. And I'm hoping from my Nuffield to bring back ideas around how do we build more collaboration in terms of more positive dialogues and bring people together, break through some of the silos that are happening in agriculture. Mine is quite a broad topic. I'm sure everybody will be considering very different ideas. Some will be very technical, some will be potentially more like around my idea, but that's the beauty of Nuffield, is it can be completely scripted to what you want to look into, and that can also change. But I'm slightly unusual, and I'm going to start off by saying that because I've done quite a lot of travel. And if anyone's seeing my first slide here and seeing 14 countries, 7 months and feeling a bit nervous about that, do not feel intimidated. Not everybody does that. I was very lucky because I made some sort of changes in my life that allowed me to do that. But really, it's a minimum of 8 weeks of travel that you're encouraged to do with your Nuffield. That can obviously increase. But I decided, because my topic was quite broad, I really wanted to just make the most of the experience and spend time really getting to know different countries, which is why I have spent really quite long periods within different countries. But to talk you through a little bit about which will be required of you and then my own journey. So everybody, when they become a Nuffield Farming Scholar, will have to do a week of meetings in London and then a week in a chosen country. So this year, for the current year group, was Brazil. I had Canada. And both of these different weeks are about meeting your fellow year group, getting to know your cohort, and also learning a bit more about UK agriculture and developing some skills around media and communications that will really set you off in your journey. And then your week where I was in Canada, it was about meeting the rest of the global network. So every year there's around 100 scholars around the world that get selected. So you're instantly catapulted into this world of people who are all doing the same scholarship. And that was quite instrumental for me, because when I applied for Nuffield, I actually didn't know where I was going to go with it. I didn't at that point think what countries. I didn't have any sort of standouts for me, because it was so chaotic, and thinking about this topic could be really sort of endless. But my week in Canada and what would be your week in another country, you begin to meet people who share stories on the ground with you about what's happening in their backyard. And it's so much easier than doing a Google search or being on LinkedIn and finding somebody. You get sort of practical examples that you can follow up. So I actually, yes, in my application, I put a few countries down, and it was probably quite basic. But I didn't really come to plan my travel until I spent that week in Canada and I made those networks and contacts with people. So I would say, if anyone is nervous about that application and seeing where you want to go, this is all going to evolve as you do the Nuffield experience. But I was very lucky. I applied for the Global Focus Programme, which 4 people in our year were lucky to do. And that is, it's like a sort of intensive communications tour of a number of countries. And I went to New Zealand, Indonesia, Japan, and Australia. Nothing to do with my topic. It was a sort of deep dive into different farming systems. I was paired up with 11 other scholars from other countries. And we just traveled very intensely for 4 weeks together. And I would highly recommend it to anyone who's looking to really sort of embrace the full Nuffield experience. But it is that, again, going back to that personal journey, it really teaches you a lot about yourself when you have 11 or 12 very strong personalities trying to navigate travel around the world, and all from different cultures. So that was quite an eye-opening experience. In terms of my personal travel, so I did around 6.5 months of my own travel. And like many of you would do, some of that was in the UK, but I also tried to focus quite a lot of time in developing countries for my topic. It was something I'd never done before. I'd actually hardly traveled. And without going into detail about where I went and what I did, what I will say is that some of these countries that I arrived in, I may have had 1 or 2 contacts in each country, and I didn't really have a complete schedule of what I was doing. But the Nuffield network was great because I had a few places to stay and to visit when I arrived. But I sort of evolved that plan on the go. So before Nuffield, was quite an organized person. I had to be. I was very structured in everything I did. And that kind of got thrown out the water a little bit, because you have to be spontaneous, because opportunities arise on the go as you're traveling. I arrived, for example, in Zimbabwe, and I did know where I was staying for the first 3 nights. And on the plane, I met a lady and her husband, and we got talking and ended up, she gave me her number and we met up for coffee. And she turned out to be the gender commissioner for the country. And suddenly I was, catapulted into this discussion around gender development. And suddenly I went from having conversations with farmers around land reform to having conversations around the empowerment of women in rural communities and how that linked with agriculture. So what I would say is that was never something I would have planned before I started traveling. And you have to be quite open to being completely taken off course with what you do and just really being willing to embrace that opportunity. And I mean, and then the other extreme, I went to Argentina and I was introduced to a wonderful guy called Alan Cameron, who actually organized my entire trip. So I arrived, picked me up from the airport. He organized all my stopping points. He set up wonderful meetings for me, and I hardly had to organize a thing, which was a complete change to my time in Africa and my time in, for example, New Zealand. So you're going to have completely different experiences than you could possibly imagine, but that is really part of the Nuffield experience. And I've still got 2 weeks of travel coming up. I've got some work in the Netherlands and some research happening in June as well. And that'll be sort of me completing this aspect of Nuffield. And what I've learned through traveling with Nuffield is that you can make it as you want. So if you want to really sort of get back home and get back to your business and start implementing your ideas, that absolutely is within your control to do that. If you want to continue traveling, Nuffield doesn't end when you hand in your report. I was just saying to Charlotte, I'm being flown to Australia in August to deliver presentations because of some of the networks that I tapped into when I was traveling in February, and they're flying me out there. And I'm also going to be doing the same in Canada. I'm being sent out there too. So there are opportunities that will arise as you're traveling to continue the journey. So don't feel you have to cram everything into 1 year and into your topic, because really you're just sort of touching the surface. Really, this is a conversation, what you're looking at, that will continue, which is, I think, is quite an exciting opportunity too. I guess I'm probably speaking far too much, so quickly on a sort of advice point of view, if anyone's listening into this and thinking they're too busy or this just isn't the time to apply, what I would say, your advice for that, of course, everyone has their unique circumstances with family and different pressures. But what I would say, if it is purely down to the fact you're too busy, don't let it put you off. Because all Nuffield scholars are very busy people, because naturally they don't sit still. And I put it off for 2 years. And every year I just got busier. And I'm probably the busiest I've been right now, even though I'm doing a Nuffield scholarship. So I would say that it's a real good indicator that you're probably a good candidate if you're someone that thinks you're too busy. If you're worried that you maybe haven't worked out your topic yet, it's something you're still sort of going back and forth on, remember, it's also about the individual. It's about being an ambassador for the program, and also the person that is going to really make the most of the opportunity and come back and share their findings. So Nuffield are very aware of that. And in my interview process, we did talk about my topic, but they wanted to know about me and about where I could take the industry forward because of the person I was. So I do think a lot of it is based on you as an individual as well. Be bold and ambitious in your application. I think, as you will soon discover if you get to do a Nuffield, the UK are notoriously bad for being bold and ambitious when we talk about what is our 5-year plan. That was one of our questions in the Nuffield application. So be bold in saying what you want to do, what you want to deliver for the industry, but also what you would like to see for yourself. So I would say no dream is too big. So definitely think of that. Again, get comfortable being uncomfortable. I'm sure I've mentioned a bit of that throughout the presentation. And be willing to step off the path and see where it takes you. Because if you are very linear in this and think, I'm going to look, for example, at insect protein because I have a business that does insect protein, I'm going to go and speak to people doing insect protein, that's a great thing to do. But you've got to be like, well, what are the different contexts of that country? What's the history? What's the culture that sits within that? So I would say you've got to be prepared to not just look at your topic and actually take in the wider benefits of what's happening in a certain country. And my last 2 points are, Nuffield can be a bit of a roller coaster of emotions. I found it quite hard because you make these really close friendships everywhere you go. You instantly, the minute you travel in this way and travel with this sort of purpose, you get past all the small talk and you're instantly connected with people. So saying goodbye can be very hard, and it can also be very hard coming back home when you've been on a high and you've been traveling, and it can be difficult on friendships, on relationships. And it's just something to really be mindful of and remember as part of that. And also for your own resilience as well. I think it's really important, because I can tell you it's tested my mental health resilience to the limit in a good and a bad way. So I think it's just something to keep in mind. But just as a last point, it really is life-changing. And I'm sure lots of things say that. But Nuffield has, like I said, it's completely changed my direction of my career. It's built friendships around the world. I've got best friends now in New Zealand, Brazil, Zimbabwe, who I speak to probably every week. So it is, again, what you make of it. But I think it's a really incredible opportunity if it's something that you want to explore. I've talked far too long, which I'm known for, but I'm very happy if anybody wants to get in touch or follow up with me after this presentation. If you've got any doubts or anything, very happy to chat to anybody. But thank you, Charlotte.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Claire. I'm just going to stop the recording.